Acree, and this is going to be tough. Acree. Okay, yeah. I wish you. I'm glad you did correct me. I certainly want to get that.
Well, now that I'm doing more of this kind of stuff as it goes along, but as a general rule, I don't care. So, I hear Acree, 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 so.
I guess I just always heard it from third person at VMS as
one
Acree.
thing. Yeah, one thing people don't know about me, it's
Acree.
De Jorge, actually.
Jorge.
Yeah, and I'm actually a Herndon.
Yeah, yes. And I'm actually Hey You. So.
That works too. I answered all those.
Hi, I'm Vince DeGeorge, and welcome to DTMMB Media Interviews, where we talk to interesting people about interesting things. We hope you enjoy listening as much as we enjoy talking to these fantastic folks, so grab your favorite beverage, sit back, and have a listen. Hi, I'm Vince DeGeorge with DTMMB Media. We have a special interview tonight. I have with me Chris Herndon, as always.
Hello, everyone.
And also sitting with me is Tony Acree, best-selling author of The Hand of God.
Howdy, guys. Thanks for the invite.
Glad to have you, Tony. We go way back, but I think we're lucky in that instance, now that we have a best-selling author in our
heck yeah,
in our circle. Tony, I'm gonna read the synopsis of The Hand of God real quick. It was 6 p.m. when the devil walked into my office and had a seat. Bounty hunter Victor McCain always wondered how his brother Mikey went from being a down-and-out loser to one of Louisville's richest men. Now he knew. His brother sold his soul to the devil, and in 24 hours, Mikey would die and spend eternity in hell unless Victor agreed to hunt down a thief, a woman as deadly as she was beautiful. On a journey of murder and betrayal, Victor must now put his own soul at risk to save his only brother, battle a dark underground organization with the goal of nothing less than global war between Christians and Muslims, fight creatures from man's darkest nightmares, and then there's the Hand of God, God's own bounty hunter. In the end, will he be a friend or an enemy? Only heaven knows. Sounds wonderful. I've read it. It is wonderful.
Exciting stuff, right?
My mom's read it. She's a big fan. She can't wait for the sequel, and neither can I. Well, spoiler alert, it is the sequel coming out.
And the good thing is I've just finished the first draft of the sequel called The Watchers.
Awesome.
I start rewrites when I get home this evening, so fast approaching the release of the second one. So,
do we have a timeline on that release?
We do not. It all depends on whether or not I make it up to a national level. The first book has done so well. The next process is looking to get a literary agent. Mm-hmm. And if I can sell both books nationally, then that would put a slowdown on the timeline. If not, we're going to give it about a month to get responses. And if we don't, then the second book might come out either between December and February.
That sounds fantastic. Can't wait. Now, this is your first published book, right? The Hand of God.
It is.
A lot of people talk about writing. What made you actually get out there and do it?
Well, I've been a writer since sixth grade. It was actually a buddy of mine in sixth grade wrote a poem for a girl that I really liked, and I decided I could do that. Mm-hmm. So I started out writing poetry in in grade school, and then by the time I got to high school, I was writing poetry for extra pizza money on Fridays at lunch. Went on to write short stories, and actually writing a novel is a totally different animal, and it was a lot more difficult to do. I went to an event called Pitch the Publisher in October of 2011 in LaGrange. And once I found out someone was willing to pay me for it, that gave me the impetus to actually get a novel finished. Because, again, I had to learn how to write a novel, despite the fact I've been writing my whole life.
Right. You've been doing mostly, like, poetry. And had you done some short stories, of course, before that? Short
story writing. I also wrote news and information articles for the Cumberland, the statewide newspaper of the Sierra Club.
Okay.
I've published a stay-at-home dad articles for a women's magazine out of California. So I've always been a writer. But I guess actually the first push to become published, I was finishing up my degree at night in my mid-30s, and my English teacher for the final, everyone had to write a letter to the editor. He said, except for you, that I've marked a paragraph in your writing journal. I want you to turn it into a short story, and you don't get your grade until you've sent it out to at least 3 places to be published. And I want to see the certified receipts where you've sent it. I went, well, okay, sure. Finish your short story, and then in Kentucky Monthly Magazine, their Derby issue, they published a story. Mm-hmm. And it was funny because when the editor of the magazine contacted me, he said, I'm sorry, but we can only afford to pay you $75 for the short story. And I'm like, pay me, you could have had it for free. And, getting some Benjamins for writing anything, whether it be a novel or short story, is worth it. So
I mean, that pretty much makes you a pro at that point when you're getting paid. Now, I do remember Pizza King's lucrative pizza for poetry deal back in the 80s.
That was really big.
Yeah,
it was big in the hip hop movement. Really.
Yeah, I can see that being very popular. However, real money is nice.
Real money is very nice. And again, it takes so much extra work to write a novel because, a novel at minimum is 55,000 words.
Mm-hmm.
The Hand of God turned in to be about 74,000, and the sequel is going to come in closer to 80. It takes a lot of time to write that much quality work. And I had to teach myself how to do that. My brain, I write a 5,000 word short story and I'm ready to go on to the next subject.
Sure,
because that's
right.
the way my brain works.
Yeah.
And so what I do is I try to write every chapter as a short story. And that keeps my interest up. It keeps the flow going. It tries to keep the action going. So I try to make each individual chapter a short story. And that's how I got myself in the groove to do that.
Yeah, we talked about this a little bit, and I thought it was interesting because I remember asking you if you had kind of storyboarded it out or had an outline, and you said no, which I found surprising because the way the book flows, it felt like, hey, each chapter is sounds like it's, the way it ended in kind of that cliffhanger, I got to read the next chapter way that professionals do. I'm surprised to find this is your first book. I was surprised that you didn't have it all kind of mapped out and that you get down there and you write. I thought that was very interesting.
Well, they talk about people who are either outliners or pantsers, and I write by the seat of my pants. I was asked to join a panel about having, see, there I go, I've already got it, writer's block. And of course, for me, I don't have writer's block. I have writer's flood. For me, there's never a problem with an idea. I have so many of them. I could write books from now to Kingdom Come and never get through every idea I've got. So I'm blessed in the fact that I type very fast. My brain runs very fast, and so the ideas just kind of flow. But that's how that happened, is being able to treat every chapter as a short story and try to make it entertaining.
Right. And another thing we talked about prior was the fact that you just keep going, and that was some good advice that you got from someone, was just keep writing. I think that's where a lot of people get stuck, and I think that's great advice.
And I'll give credit to Linda Goen. She told me when I was first starting out and I was trying to make every chapter perfect, she asked me how the progress was going. I said, well, it's tough. I'm having trouble getting this chapter correct. She says, stop it. Write the whole thing. And even if you come up with a great idea for chapter 1 and you're in chapter 10, make a side note and don't even rewrite a single word until you've got the whole book finished, and then go back and do your edits. And once I got that in my brain, the process became extremely easy. So I keep, even to this day, for the second book, I've got a whole set of notes I've made. So when I start the rewrites tonight, I'll go back to chapter 1 and look at my notes and try to incorporate the changes that I found and do it that way.
Yeah, and that kind of leads into my next question. You said it made it much easier. Was writing a book as a whole, writing a novel, was it easier or was it harder than you imagined?
Once you learn the trick, it's easier.
Great.
Because like any other muscle, your brain, when you're sitting down to write, I think it's funny when people ask me what's the number one tip to be a writer. It sounds kind of silly, but you have to write.
Yeah.
And you have to write every day. So once I got in the habit of, about 6 p.m., it's time for me to sit down and write, and I try to get as many as 1,000 words a day if I get 500. But once you get in the habit of sitting down every day, your brain's ready, you've conditioned it, and by doing that, you get that forward momentum, and then it starts to become fun. Once you pass, the first 5 or 6 chapters are always tough because, you're just getting started and you've got so long to go. But then you get into chapter 10 and chapter 15 and then chapter 20, and you actually see that progress going forward. But once you learn the trick and just do it every day, I think it becomes a lot easier.
Yeah, that's great advice.
Now, when you said you have a lot of ideas, and which sounds like it makes for potential for a pretty good series of books, about this, this style or even these characters. Is this something you've had for, years before you started writing the novel, or did you sit down and just maybe had some concepts?
Well, for this book, I came up with the idea in 2005 and wrote about 3 chapters and said, this is hard work, and stopped. Because at the time I didn't have a book deal, and it's like, I'd rather write a short story. But actually for this, the whole idea popped in my head at once. I had the beginning, I had the ending, and I just needed to find some entertaining parts in the middle to connect the two. And the same thing with the sequel. I came up with the idea for The Watchers while doing research for the first book, as I was looking something up and went, well, that'll make a great second book. And then I want to give a shout out to my daughter, Katie. When she was 9, I have twin twin girls. I had no idea what I was going to do for the third book. And Katie says, well, Dad, if you do this, and then you did that, and then Victor would have to do this. I went, you know what? That's not just good. That's darn good.
Out of the mouth of babes,
and
as they say.
For her giving me the conflict, the whole rest of the book then just popped into my head. I had the beginning and the ending and most of the middle. So for me, ideas kind of come fully formed for these novels. And so I try to find some things that are entertaining in the middle to keep it going for pace. So
Well, I think you successfully accomplished that with this book.
So with the first book, were you already thinking there's going to be another book with the,
I was, because the great thing about the Pitch the Publisher event, there were 3 publishers there, and all 3 offered to publish both books. I had 2 book proposals, this supernatural thriller and then a straight private investigative novel set here in Louisville. And one of the publishers said, I want you to know, before we got together, the 3 publishers got together and said, what story did you all like the best? And we all picked your story. So having that, knowing that there were people out there that really wanted it.
Right.
And then my beta readers, I think that's something else that's important for someone writing a novel, is having people that you trust that are willing to tell you when you're full of it and that you've done something wrong. And I had 6 people that have no problem doing that. They like to do it on a regular basis anyway. But they gave me really good feedback, and quite frankly, they loved it. And the first guy I sent the book out to as a beta reader, he said, I've got maybe time to read 1 chapter tonight. I'll try to get to the rest. I sent him 10. He said, I'll try to get the rest over the weekend. He sent me a text the next morning and said, here's the best compliment I can give you. I couldn't stop. I had to read all 10 chapters. I stayed up to like 1 in the morning reading it. And he said, if nothing else, your pace is fantastic. So, and that kind of enthusiasm makes you want to write more.
Sure, absolutely.
That's what you want to hear. I couldn't put it down once I started reading it. I knew it would be about the best, compliment you get.
So you mentioned a publisher. You want to talk about the publisher for a minute?
I do. I'm with Hydra Publications. It's a small press out of Madison, Indiana. Frank Hall is the owner. Very generous. You can't find a better guy than Frank. And the people at Hydra, my editor is Martha Swanson. And that's another person who had no problem. She was very intelligent and gave me really great suggestions. And working with her, it was definitely a collaborative process. I know that I'm a writer. I can't spell worth a hoot. So when someone like her tells me you really need to change, and for her, she, like one of the main voices in the book, Samantha, one of the main characters, she said, I don't think you quite have the voice right. You need to work on this. And so I spent most of my rewrites for book 1 making sure Samantha was pegged and get the voice right. And I think that we did a good job of that. And so, and then Carrie Clawwater was my cover artist. And I love my cover. And so...
Oh, yeah, it's really great.
Yeah,
it really catches your eye.
It does. And so I got lucky in that I was dealing with 3 individuals who love books, love the writing process, and were great with me as far as being collaborative and taking my input and feeling safe that what they were telling me to do was worthwhile.
Yeah, I know. And here's the thing that's interesting. I guess they used was it their idea to have it released digitally first, because that's how I first read it. I put it on my my iPad on the Kindle app, and I read it that way first before actually buying a hard copy. Was that their idea to kind of release it?
Well, actually, it's just the way the publishing business worked. It was actually going to release them both at the same time, but it takes a while for the book to populate. When you're small press,
right? It
takes a while for it to show up on Amazon and Barnes & Noble. So the digital came out in January, and the print came out in February.
Right. How do you feel about the digital release? I mean, is that something? Have you had success there, or do you feel like you've had more success with the hard copy?
Well, I've sold more of the digital, of course, online through the Amazons and Barnes & Nobles, and I've sold a lot more of obviously the print in person. So I'm a big fan of the digital format. I think it's the wave of the future. I think that's how. I love going into a bookstore. I love the smell of books. I like to hold a book. Having said that, when you can finish reading a book and then 30 seconds later be starting on your next one by downloading it to your Kindle or to your Nook or whatever you're going to read with, I think digital format's the way of the future. So,
well, I do too. And the thing was, basically, out of me, you got a couple of copies because I got the digital copy, and I do like that hard copy to have to hold and to have in a collection. So I mean, it's definitely the future of distribution. Some people may only have it digitally, but I think it's certainly an opportunity for authors. They shouldn't be scared of things like piracy or other things like that. I think it's more of an opportunity. Real readers are gonna give you their business.
And quite a few people have done it. They've bought the digital copy and then gone off and either bought it as gifts or to have their own hard copy and bought both. So
sure, I wanted to buy one for my mother and have you sign it. I came to that one event. and we talked a little bit then, and that's something you can't really do with the digital copy. There are ways to share it, but